Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Shaun from Zoobox, and we're going to be talking about movies again. I got to kind of whisper because it's late. We're going to be talking about 2018's Hotel Artemis. It is written and directed by Drew Pearce. This, I believe, is his feature-length film debut. He's more of like a producer. He's done a lot of story work, a lot of writing. He's worked on some of the Marvel stuff. It stars Jodie Foster, Sophia Boutella, Dave Bautista, Sterling K. Brown, who's so great, and I wish that he would find the thing that he is most that utilizes him the best. He's swung and a miss a few times, but Jeff Goldblum is also in this movie. Jenny Slate is in this movie. Zachary Quinto, Charlie Day, Kenneth Choi. It's a pretty stacked cast, and and let's read the IMDb plot synopsis. They always really undersell the movie. Set in a riot-torn near-future Los Angeles, Hotel Artemis follows the nurse who runs a secret members-only emergency room for criminals. So yeah, there you go. That's the basic conceit of the movie. And I've been meaning to watch this for a while. And it's not because I don't know, there was something about it. I remember seeing the trailer when it first came out and just being like, that looks like a movie from like the late 90s or early 2000s. And that's kind of a thing that's kind of come back in fashion, I think, as the certain generations kind of get a little bit older. People that were younger when those things came out, they're more influenced by those type of movies. And now we're kind of getting a similar thing. It's kind of like these very tight concepts, back to basics, very simple, straightforward, kooky characters. If I were to make a comparison, I would say this is like a really scaled back Smokin' Aces. Smokin' Aces, if you remember, is the Joe Carnahan movie, which I think came out around, I want to say like 2006, 2007 maybe, at the latest. So I would say even goes kind of harkens back to that movie. These kind of, I don't know, just almost trying too hard, Smokin' Aces. Joe Carnahan's found his kind of his niche later, but Smokin' Aces is a very try-hardy movie in my opinion. I was not a huge fan of Smokin' Aces, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Hotel Artemis. So how is Hotel Artemis? It is like I thought when I saw the trailer and what I thought, it is kind of one of those movies. It's a very stylish, very simple premise, all takes place in kind of one location. For the most part, you could definitely tell it was a smaller budget, and not in a bad way. I think actually the production design is a pretty big highlight of the movie. The hotel itself is pretty good looking. It's pretty basic. You only get to see a few rooms of it, but they did a good job with that stuff, and it gives off that near future kind of almost dystopian vibe, like a gangster version of that. And I thought that actually, as the hotel itself, actually is one of the more impressive characters. The rest of the cast is pretty good. Pretty good. I wouldn't say anybody really blew me away. It was fun to see Jodie Foster in something that's a little bit more like lowbrow, a little more playful. She hasn't done anything like this in a long time, if ever. Really done something like this. Because Hotel Artemis is weird. It feels like it's like a comic book adaptation. That's the vibe you get. It would be something that would be... what's the guy's name? I'm gonna blank on his name. It's something the guy wrote like 100 Bullets. So you can look that up if you're super curious. Or even maybe like a Garth Ennis, like his Punisher Max series, Preacher. Like I could see like a little mini arc of Preacher taking place in Hotel Artemis, a version of it. And but it's so straightforward. I think with Charlie Day's in this, and he's got kind of not a big role, but he's got an extended cameo kind of role. And Charlie Day should just do It's Always Sunny. I love It's Always Sunny. Anytime I've ever seen Charlie Day try to do anything outside of that wheelhouse, he just does not have the range. So it's kind of just weird. And even though in this he's supposed to be more of a despicable, funny asshole, and it's just, I don't know. He's not very likable in other roles other than Charlie. It's kind of weird. I feel bad saying that because you don't want to be, limiting or whatever. And also, like I said, they've got Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown is really good in this. He's good in everything, though. So it's not really that big of a surprise. Sterling K. Brown is one of those guys that just nails it. The first time I think I saw him was American Crime Story, the O.J. Simpson one, with Cuba Gooding Jr. and John Travolta and David Schwimmer, and he plays one of the prosecuting attorneys, and he's really good. He's really good. I've been a big fan ever since. I know he was on a TV show that people are big fans of. Was it Parenthood? I don't know. I don't really watch network television. I don't watch television very often at all. I've kind of gone exclusively to movies, select television shows, select streaming shows, you know. But what would I say overall? Overall, I would say that this is like a fun enough time. It's really short. It's got that perfect 90-minute length. You're in, you're out. It's the equivalent of watching 2 episodes of a show. So you can kind of budget your time. Especially when you get married and you have like a kid or kids, you really realize that the 90-minute runtime is the perfect runtime for a movie. And anything that goes beyond 90 minutes, you're like, they're wasting my time. Obviously, I'm being hyperbolic, but a lot of times you're like, hey, they told it in 90 minutes. Why can't you? Why do you need that? Why do you need 2 hours? But yeah, so that was why I watched it. It was on like kind of my list. I saw it popped up on Amazon Prime, but I was like, I need to watch something tonight. And it hit that criteria, that 90 minutes. I was like, sweet, 90 minutes, let's go. And it's not the worst way I've ever spent 90 minutes. It's a shallow movie. It is kind of very one note. There is not a lot of good or character development at all. Pretty much, there is like little mini arcs, and that's what I mean when it felt like a comic book, because it felt like this would have been like a one shot or just like a little 6-issue series, because it feels like the world building and the character stuff feels very comic booky. I will say this though, the world building is actually really, really good. I thought the little hints they dropped about what was going on, like it said in the description, there's like a riot going on outside and it's kind of chaos, and then you get a little glimpse into the kind of world they live in, this weird gangster run world, and it's where they're kind of like kings. It's very interesting. It's very cool, and it gives you just a little bit. It reminded me of actually a lot in some respects. Reminded me in like the spirit is the same as the original John Wick movie. It is basically just about badass hitman John Wick going and killing people, but in the first movie they don't overdo it. They just kind of sprinkle in kind of the world building stuff, and it just makes everything else more rich. It doesn't go overboard. I think honestly that's kind of the demise of the John Wick movies. By the time you get to 3, it's just too up its own ass with its own like world building and lore. It just stops being, because you just can't actually pay that stuff off in an actual interesting way. It's all just kind of silly and contrived, and either you can go with it or you're not, or you can't. And I can go with it to a certain extent, but I thought John Wick 3 was kind of disappointing. Sorry. John Wick 2 is the GOAT right now. But yeah, it kind of reminded me of that, like just that kind of stuff. In terms of how it builds out its world without really showing you anything, without really going into depth with anything. And the characters are very similar in that respect. I feel like it's all like innuendo. It's all just little hints. Jodie Foster's character, who I guess you would consider the main character of the movie, gets the most character development. I know what point it's trying to make at the end of the movie. I don't think it does enough to connect the dots where it feels like truly impactful. And then there's kind of this resolvedness about what happens at the end, because they go through. They're building towards something, and then it doesn't feel like it really pays it off. And the way it does kind of pay it off is very dumb, very contrived. Because basically all the characters are there to like serve plot function more than they are to be interesting characters. Like I said, Jodie Foster is the character with like the actual arc, the story. Everybody else is kind of like some sort of plot machination for the most part for her to have to go through experiences. And they what they did is they employed quirky characters. That's how they do it nowadays. It kind of reminded me of this other movie I watched not too long ago. This Drew Goddard movie. Was it Bad Times at the El Royale? Which I did not really like, and it's almost 3 hours long. It's like 2.5 hours long, but it has the same kind of vibe where it's like a group of interesting, quirky characters, and it kind of just I think feels like it can coast on this idea that like look at these badasses, these are cool. And the thing that I would suppose that maybe sets it apart from a lot of those movies like it of the era of the time, is the quality of actors. That's the same thing that the Bad Times of the El Royale has the same kind of factor where it's like these really kind of stock, not really that actually interesting. This all affect characters, but they got a good cast because nowadays you can get big actors to do these kind of movies. I'm curious what this was. This Drew Pearce guy, like I said, he seems like he was a producer. He's worked as a writer a lot. He must have called in a bunch of favors. That's what it feels like. If you can get Jeff Goldblum and Jodie Foster and even Zachary Quinto in your movie, in your like little movie, because it's got modest goals, and it's a very obviously very modestly budgeted movie, and not in a bad way. Like I said, I think they spent their money well, but yeah, it's just kind of an oddity. I can't say that it blew my socks off. But if you're in the right mood, and like I would call this like a turn your brain off kind of movie. And then if you're like kind of my age, which is 33, you could maybe transport yourself back to when you were a teenager, and you would find something like this randomly on a Blockbuster shelf, because these kind of movies I feel like they just used to get made all the time. They just don't anymore. For better or worse. Well, they do get made. I guess they do get made. They're all in VOD. They're all lost in a VOD search algorithm. But they don't like hit theaters. They're not theatrical experiences anymore for the most part. And like there's a sense, like I said, about people my age that are getting older and that are coming into the industry and becoming filmmakers themselves. And they're definitely hearkening back to like a certain era of filmmaking. There's a movie that came out a few years ago that I think would also kind of like this vein, in the same vein. It's called Mayhem. So it's kind of a mini trend, Every once in a while, one will pop up and have like better actors than you'd think in it. Usually they don't slum it like this. But yeah, I cannot. I don't know. It depends if you're in the right mood, like I said, and you just feel like kind of shutting your brain off for 90 minutes, be a good one to watch and then immediately fall asleep and never think of it again. Like I had to come in and do this review right away because I was like, I might not remember Hotel Artemis in 2 days. It's just that kind of movie. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, you can find us on Facebook at Zoobox Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Zoobox Podcast, and you can drop me a line on the emails. Yeah, that's right. We got an email address, zooboxpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you have any requests, if you have anything specifically you would like me to watch and talk about over these daily videos, just drop me a line. I will definitely consider it. I will watch almost anything, so if you ask me to watch something, there is a good chance that I will actually deliver on it, and I'll give you your own little dedication. All right, everybody. Thank you.